Welcome to the POMcast with Steve Willis, your independent, unbiased, and unbought source for Ole Miss athletics. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Happy Election Day Eve, Monday, 11/2/2020. That's November 2nd for those that aren't paying attention. Thank you for joining the POMcast. I'm the host, Stephen Willis. And this is a bye week. We finally made it to a bye week. We actually made it to a bye week. We are 2-4. We are an official's call away from being 3-3. And we are throwing a game away ourselves away from being 4-2. But we're 2-4. We're a new team. We're learning how to win. And that is how it's positioned now. Just a little house cleaning here this Friday. There will not be a POMcast. I am heading down to take a 3-day weekend to find the Central Florida studios. I will let you know if I buy a house next week. It is looking that way now. Friday night or Friday afternoon or Saturday morning, we are going to be looking at houses. So I'm excited about that. Also, if you want to follow us on Twitter, follow us at the Stephen Willis or at Ole Positively. Hit us up on Facebook. Like us at facebook.com/POMcast and join our Facebook group at Positively Ole Miss. Thank you. And of course, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel at Positively Ole Miss and join us on Twitch at Positively Ole Miss. This will all make a lot more sense in the coming months. Be patient. We're going to work on the distribution method. Right now, we're on audio at Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and TuneIn Radio. So that's pretty cool. If you like audio, we are there, and you won't miss anything right now there. So there's ways you can listen. You can subscribe to those podcasts, and it will download automatically, and it will be waiting on your phone whenever you're ready. Now, every day at 10 o'clock, well, most days at 10 o'clock during weekdays, the POMcast is on the air. Thursdays at 2 is around the SEC. And Saturdays after the game is We've Got Notes. That's our 3 podcast lineup at the moment. We are probably going to expand that once we go video only. So we're looking forward to that. Now, let's take this Monday to look back. Since it's a bye week, we have no reason to look forward. But let's look back at Ole Miss versus Vanderbilt. And it is probably the greatest game played by an Ole Miss quarterback. And in one season, we've got the worst game and the best game by the same quarterback. So congratulations to him for Vandy. That was phenomenal. Walter Camp, National Offensive Player of the Week. The second Ole Miss Rebel to get that behind Dexter. But this was more important, the fact that it is our first data point of him being able to rebound. We haven't had that before. It's things have kind of spiraled and just kept going and just methodical, and then he got hurt last year. And this season was great, and then he started spiraling a little bit against Arkansas and against Auburn, and we needed to see that he could bounce back. Well, he did. He stopped the bleeding. I told you last week there was still chances that he could do it, and he did. In fact, that game this weekend, our last weekend, played out exactly how I told you to. The whole game plan was Ole Miss wanted one-on-ones. Vandy wanted to prevent one-on-ones. They could not scheme it in a way that could do that because Elijah Moore is really good. It started out with one-on-ones with Elijah Moore. And then once they came down and schemed a little bit in the second half, the one-on-ones opened up with Jonathan Mingo and Braylon Sanders and Dontario Drummond and Kenny Obola. And the whole offense kind of started clicking again, which in the next segment of the show, we're going to talk about how hopefully this has been a great learning experience for Matt Corral. Hopefully he understands now that Elijah Moore is great, and he did a lot of damage this weekend, but the offense really clicks when everybody is involved. And we saw a bunch of hitches, which is a staple of the Baylor offense, but the first time we really saw it large scale here. There's easy passes to get him going. I think Lane Kiffin and Jeff Leppi also are having to get to understand their quarterback, and they're starting to see that he needs something good to happen early for him to click. So against Vandy, they set him up with hitches and hitches and hitches, and then he hit a pass to Elijah Moore like 30 yards downfield on the second drive, and from there it was on. Next thing you know, he's completed 19 passes in a row, broke Eli Manning's record, tied Eli Manning's record with 6 touchdown passes, which took Eli 6 overtimes to get, or 7 overtimes to get. This happened in regulation. I mean, it was probably the greatest game ever played by an Ole Miss quarterback. I mean, there's no really backing down from that. So Matt Corral played really well. Jerry Neely played well. The defense actually played well. They gave up a garbage time touchdown against the Twos, but they gave up, like we said, the ceiling was 14 points for Vandy. And when the starters were in, it was at 14 points. And I told you that if we were talking about a loss to Vanderbilt, something went terribly wrong because Ole Miss was that much better than them. The only way we could lose that game was to beat ourselves, and obviously we did not do that. And the next thing you know, it was 54-14 in the third quarter. I mean, there was 10 minutes to go in that game, and I just wanted it to be over. I felt so bad for Vandy. Vandy did a lot of stuff for me personally. I am a big proponent of Vanderbilt Hospital, and I probably wouldn't be here without them. So it kind of hurt me a little bit to see that going. But Matt Corral had a really great day. 31-34, 6 touchdowns, 412 yards. No interceptions. Really great day. Probably the best day in quarterbacking at Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has had some phenomenal quarterbacks. When Ole Miss has had games like that, they've played traditionally South Alabama or Arkansas State. All right, let's take a break. POMcast, Stephen Willis, stick around.
Only 10% of us get enough daily exercise.
And that number is dropping.
Nearly 30% of us are overweight or obese.
We spend 6 hours a day in front of a screen.
As a result, we now have a shorter life expectancy than our parents.
But give us the right start in sports, and we'll never stop.
Learn how at active4life.ca.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis from Positively Ole Miss. We're almost done with this break. We'll be back with good information quite soon.
The military has been in every generation of my family, and so has VA. It wasn't easy for my dad after Vietnam, but VA helped him and my mom get the home they'd always wanted. My grandpa's been coming to VA since World War II. They even helped him lay to rest one of his battle buddies from Normandy. And me, I followed in their footsteps and served with pride. And now that I'm out of the military, the GI Bill's helping me with school. Every generation of my family has served, and VA has served us all.
Hey, POMcast, welcome back. Segment 2, Stephen Willis, right here on the Positively Ole Miss Network. I want to thank everybody for listening. We've increased our audience quite a bit over the last few weeks. Now, I'm not stupid enough to think that that is something other than football season, but thank you for sticking around and listening to this old country boy's opinion on college football, what's going on. Because it is a little bit different. Because if you hear me, one thing I want you to take, if you take nothing else from this podcast, is every player is a system player. And you can't rank them because a player might be 25th in a pro style system and 75th in a spread system and 1025th in a wishbone system. Now, if you take micro systems in between there, like, Troy Calhoun's running the wishbone at Air Force, but he's not running the wishbone. It's more spread. It's there, but it's a unique system. So there's hundreds of systems in college football. Each player is a particular fit to that system. If you go to the wrong one and there's not a fit, you are not going to be successful to the level that you would at this other place where you were a fit. You need to understand that. More than anything else, if you take anything else from this podcast and the history of it airing, is every player is a system player. Everybody says they get to the lazy takes that Ole Miss defensively is struggling because of lack of talent. No, they're not. They were mid-level last year. They were bad on pass defense, but that was because of freshmen everywhere. That's not a talent issue. It's a system issue. You're asking them to do something else. You're asking Lakia Henry to go sideline to sideline as opposed to going A gap to B gap. That's a little different. It's not a talent issue. It's a fit issue. The recruiting take that people make whenever they break down games are lazy. I mean, it just is. They just over and over, different reporters, it is lazy. Jonathan Haynes fit last year's defense. He does not fit this year's defense. It's not a talent issue. It's not an issue where he should be playing. It's a system and fit issue. Understand that. If you don't understand anything else, whenever it comes to rankings, and let's get on this again because I've done this last week or the week before, but I'll say it again for those that didn't hear it. Mel Kiper was successful back in the 80s because there were two systems in the NFL, basically. The Bill Walsh system and the Bill Parcells system. But each of those required basically a similar type player. So you could rate people 1 to 105th for the, or 50th or whatever for the NFL draft because in that system they fit. Now, let's fast forward 40 years. And in the NFL alone, there's Baltimore, there's San Francisco, there's Arizona, there's Kansas City, there's San Diego. Pro Style is one of 6 or 7 systems in the NFL right now. Everybody has committed to doing different things. So the draft grades are naturally going to drop because it is impossible to rank a player in the air raid, in Baltimore's basically spread option system, and the pro style system. It's 3 different types of players. So unless you have 3 different types of rankings, you are going to mess up. So this is the reason that pro teams have gone to different systems and more diversity, because it expands your player pool and your chance to make a difference, to get a playmaker. because Justin Herbert at San Diego, Lamar Jackson at Baltimore, and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City and Kyler Murray at Arizona are vastly different quarterbacks. This isn't 1984 where every team looked just alike. It's vastly different. And the amount of diversity in the NFL right now is fantastic. Which also is really good because everybody going to analytics and all that is creating a less diverse league for their chosen team or whatever. Basketball and baseball, it's become less diverse. The NFL is becoming more diverse. More systems, more people willing to go all in on college. What they've been doing for generations. And you have players that didn't make it in the NFL because they needed a system to be built around them. If that makes sense. Well, in college football, they took that system that is falling apart at the highest level and tried to bring that down into college football. Those are called recruiting rankings. So, what they are doing is they are judging based off of one system. They're copying the NFL. Because the people that are in charge of these rankings were sports writers at the Palm Beach Post or something. They're not football people. After 2009, after Rivals and 24/7 split, Rivals replaced the rankers that were like, I don't know, scouts and people trained to do this because before they had a pretty good system under Bobby Burton and with Barton Simmons and those guys, to where it became like the old dog training the new dog. This is what you look at. And now it's thanks to 2009 and of course the economic backlash now. The Texas recruiting analyst was a videographer when I was there. I mean, it just doesn't work. Between that and ESPN, and then you take into the fact that everything has become so combine driven. And the reason is people don't know what they're seeing, right? They don't know what they're seeing. So they use analytics and then they describe what the analytics are seeing. Not whether the player is good, but whether that 40 time or some time is good. It's an analytic thing. Because they don't know what they're seeing and they don't know what they're talking about. So they have to find something that they do know what they're talking about. And they do that by inventing a definition of an analytic. People that are leaning too much on analytics for this, A, are extremely lazy, B, they are not knowledgeable about what they're seeing, and C, you really can't trust them at all. Analytics are a lazy way to break down football. It's trying to find a number that fits what your opinion is that wasn't educated to begin with. So, don't dive off into analytics. So, every player is a system player. Period. There is no base analytic that can tell you the difference of whether somebody is a better fit in this system and this system or this system. It's all fit. It's all evaluation. And it's really all about a quarterback and a coach knowing which type of player fits them. Because there are people, like we discussed with Kirby last week, he is getting great players. He's just not getting the right players. And he's changing up offensively to fit because he wants to play football that is 5 or 10 years old. And if you do that, it's just fool's gold, and you're going to have the same problems over and over again. Just like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. The NFL did that for generations. Until free agency and the Buccaneers, who won the last 20 years, won. The Saints and the Buccaneers, just over the course of 20 years, did the same thing over and over and just struggled. It was nothing but a struggle bus for them. But now the Bucs and the Saints they're in a good position, but it took them a half a century to get there. So just realize that every player is a system player. Now, that's the reason we talk about this Nouveau Baylor system. It's the reason we went back to March to break down FAU and the Nouveau Baylor system. Because that is the first data point for Ole Miss. Everybody else was completely missing it. They don't want to do their homework. And the dirty secret is they weren't prepared for this season because they intentionally did not learn the game. And they will brag about it. They say, like, oh no, we're just going to tell you what's going on. And then they're going to get into the opinion game. Well, if you don't know what's going on, how can you get into the opinion game, and why does your opinion matter? It doesn't. It just doesn't. Segment 2 in the books, POMcast. Stephen Willis, thank you very much. Last segment of the day coming up.
You want to answer that, don't you? I bet it's just killing you seeing the soft glow just inches away. Someone wants to tell you something or ask you something. Oh, come on, answer it already! Just so we're clear, that wasn't my fault. Next time, ignore your inner voice. Don't text and drive. A message from Florida's trusted choice independent insurance agents.
Hey, this is Stephen Willis. I just want you to stick around a little longer. We're going to get back to the podcast right after these messages.
Tonight, nearly 40,000 veterans across the country are homeless. These men and women have pledged to serve our nation, and now we must serve them. Landlords across the country have helped make significant progress in reducing veteran homelessness by making housing available, but there is more that we can do to bring our veterans home. Visit www.va.gov/homeless to see how you can get involved. And if you are a veteran and you are experiencing homelessness, please call 877-4AID-VET. Thank you.
POMcast, Stephen Willis, last segment of the day. Thank you for listening. We're having a lot of fun here today. Talking a little football, talking a little systems, talking a little bit of Ole Miss Vandy. And I think we're going to get into basketball a little bit later this week. First and foremost, this will be a football podcast and show moving forward because football is the most important thing in the college athletic pantheon. But we'll talk a little basketball, a little baseball as well. So I'm just ecstatic that you joined us. Ole Miss won 54-21 over Vandy Saturday in what was probably the greatest quarterback performance in Ole Miss history. We've seen the worst, we've seen the best, the whole gambit. Now, moving forward, this is what we need. Everybody's going to talk what he needs to work on. Everybody's going to talk about everything else, but this is actually what he needs to work on. He's right now a very high ceiling quarterback and a very low floor quarterback. He has to raise that floor. That should be his time at Ole Miss, raising that floor. If he gets to a point where his bad is not particularly bad, all of a sudden he's Tua or Joe Burrow. I mean, it's pretty lofty company he can keep, especially in this offense. But he's got to take steps. He can't lock on to receivers. He can't try to score 2 touchdowns with 1 pass. I mean, doing things that you can't do. He can't do that. And he's well on his way to getting that ironed out. But right now, he's a very high ceiling quarterback and a very low floor. We've seen the peaks, we've seen the valleys. We need to get rid of the valleys. We need to turn the peaks into a plateau and just go. So I'm very excited about Ole Miss and Vandy. Ole Miss gave up some yards, but I mean they were playing with the 2s for a quarter and a half. Still, they only gave up 1 touchdown, 21 total. The starting defense gave up 14 points. They play pretty well. There's 3 turnovers. Tyler Knight at safety is fun. He's not all SEC. He's not going to be great, but he's scrappy and he's fun to watch. And if you want to watch somebody over the last 4 games, watch him. He seems to fit and he seems to be getting a little bit more comfortable, and he has that it factor. The only downside for him is he's 5'6". So, but he is scrappy. He is fun. Watch Tylen Knight. That's a recommendation from looking at this defense. As he gets more comfortable over the next 2 weeks, he should. I think you're going to see more and more and more on him. If you notice also, he kind of played the star position a good bit of the time at 5'6", 180 pounds, 170 pounds. There's a chance he could make some plays. And the defense is going to get better with Sam Williams on one side and Tylen Knight on the other if he continues to perform like that. Now, the run game of the other team is going to try and run directly at him, and we have to scheme around that. But Lakeith Henry played a very good game and took up some of that slack this week. A.J. Finley with a pick and a fumble recovery. Very good job. He played a good game. The light's starting to come on a little bit for him. We'll see against South Carolina in a couple of weeks. The military appreciation game. Oh, also at Fanatics, I don't usually just say go to a big change, but Fanatics has something called Operation Hat Trick for Veterans Day, and some of the proceeds from that goes to actual veterans causes. But you can get things like digital camouflage Ole Miss shirts and sweatshirts and things like that. It's basically military-looking things, but Ole Miss. So that's at fanatics.com. You can look at that. I got a pullover the other day, and also got a little t-shirt hoodie from on there. But that is an avenue you can go, and it's kind of a different look. If you want different looks for your Ole Miss stuff, this is a way to get that done. The digital camouflage is always the way to go. It's a very military. And if you listen to my spots on here, I'm very pro-military and pro-veteran. And part of listening to this podcast is supporting the troops. That's a simple avenue you can take to do it. Just put it on for 30 minutes a day, build it up, and we are going to support the troops, even though they pay nothing for it. I want their causes to be in the forefront, because veterans are a very, very important topic to me, and probably the most important topic. It is my cause. So listen to the veterans commercials and help out if you can. So Not a bad Monday podcast. Thank you very much for listening. It's been a lot of fun. But this has been the Monday podcast. We'll be back tomorrow, same time. Stick around. Well, thank you very much. Take care.